And without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Jen Pirtle to kick things off. Jen, take it away.
All right, thanks, Brian. We're just really happy that we're coming to an end of the Institute. I know that you guys are starting your tough work ahead with your teams. I think we're glad that you're attending this session, the social media chat for metrics, because I think you're going to need to start thinking about what the measure of success is going to be, and I think the pilot states are going to be able to help you a lot. So, Rick, take it away.
Thank you, Jen and Brian, and thanks again for everybody making it here with us today. I notice, again, a pretty full house of implementation states with us, and again, looking forward to the event and to giving you an opportunity really to interact with all these folks from the places that have kind of gone before and have therefore had some lessons learned that can shorten your learning curve as we go. I've noticed already that many people have chimed in, some of you from different locations. So if you're not already in the welcome chat saying hi, please do so that we know who's with us. But basically, most, if not all, of the states are here, and I think it's time that we get to it. We've got just about 45 minutes scheduled for today's event. Remember how this thing works. Basically going to pose a question to get a dialogue started with the SMEs. But I'm more interested, really, of allowing that dialogue to extend to each and to all of you. So, Brian, I'll ask you to stand by. We've got, only about 10 or 12, 14 logins. So if people are mindful of not putting us on hold and letting us listen to your Christmas music while you run to get coffee or something, we can open up the phone lines when we get there. So stand by, Brian. We're going to probably be doing that in a little bit. So you guys know them now. They are becoming household names, these guys, rock stars of webinar world. Joanna, Michael, and Darlene are all again with us. Guys, thanks again so much, for taking making a commitment, I guess, of so much of your time and your talent for the benefit of all of us. We really do appreciate it. And today, we've talked to you guys now about all manner of things in social media. From the kind of dipping your toes in the water and getting a Facebook page or a Twitter account established, all the way through to doing online virtual job fairs and talent communities, Mike, which are, for some folks, probably new words they've learned during the course of this institute. Today is about measuring success, and I'm aware that each of you has kind of different ways that you've gone about doing it, and more likely those ways have evolved over time as you started. So let me kick it off this way. If you could tell us, maybe a few words, and we'll just go left to right, starting with Joanna again. In your opinion, what do you think is the most critical measure that states should be focused on as they enter this bold world of social media and trying to kind of move towards that integrated vision we've all been working on for the last 2 weeks? Joanna, what measures strike you as critically important for states?
Well, first you want to know where you are right now. So I think most of the states already have some kind of social media presence versus I think one doesn't. You want to see where you are right now when it comes to not only maybe your followers or your likes, depending on your tools, but the level of engagement that you currently have with the customers that are using your tools to be able to engage with you. And there's a lot of different variables within that engagement and what is engagement, but you want to look at the quality of the engagement that you have. And I'm going to let Mike and Darlene kind of get into a little bit more detail so they have time to talk today. But I can go into more detail about where we were and what we decided to measure as we move forward. But you have to start with where you are right now and where you hope to go.
Okay, so the first thing out of your mouth is find out where you are right now. I'm going to want to come back to you a little bit on that because I think that I wasn't expecting that answer, and frankly, it makes more sense than anything I could have imagined as an answer. So I'll want to explore that a little bit with you more, Joanna, but let's go ahead and let's let Michael in. Thanks for that. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, well, I'm assuming that the goal that we need to keep in mind is to help people find jobs, get better jobs, and to help businesses connect with talent. And so I would say you need to set your goals appropriately and then try to measure your progress towards that. So that would be trying to connect those metrics that Joanna started talking about, and I know we'll talk more about, so that you can track those outcomes. And it's not necessarily going to be all that easy. It's not all that easy to understand the outcomes of a lot of the stuff that we do in the workforce system. But one of the things that I like the most about the talent community concept is we will have a way, since we're involving both parties, the businesses with the opportunities and the talent with the skills in the same environment, we're going to probably be able to get a little closer towards making that connection. And for example, one of the things that we want out of the talent community vendor that we will be selecting is an ability to give the business a picture of their success on the community, which is how many people did you actually hire on the community. In order to do that, they need to feed that information back to us. So that's why we're so very interested in that aspect, to be able to close that loop.
I mean, that's, again, already you guys, I think, are opening up our minds. I just posted to the chat that everybody could see kind of my shorthand of what I've heard thus far from the both of you. I expected you to go right to likes and you didn't, and that's really important. And Mike, your concept of remembering this is about finding jobs, better jobs, and helping employers connect to talent, and then align your goals or your metrics to those goals. So if you think of it that way, a Facebook page isn't a goal; it's a tactic, right? So I'm going to want to expand on that with you. That's really an interesting take. Thanks, Mike. Let's go over to Darlene, who is not in Iowa. On the other hand, Idaho.
Good job. So to not repeat what they said, because both of what they said was excellent, I will move to the likes.
Okay.
You want to, obviously likes and followers are a start, because the more you have, in theory, more people are seeing your content, and therefore you're connecting more job seekers and employers. But, I mean, that could just be wallpaper to them. They may not be clicking and actually seeing them. So you also need to look at the interactivity. You need to look at people who share from Facebook. You need to look at retweets. And from that you can see, what of your posts was the most popular, where you need to work. Did you get more job seekers and businesses? So you can look at the numbers. We use Hootsuite. We use Facebook. We use the LinkedIn analytics. So we look at them all. And then the other thing is, anecdotally, we look for success stories, and then we write those up and put them on the blog, because that's another way that we can tell how we're doing our job as an agency, is the success stories from the businesses and the job seekers.
People, particularly, I find myself a lot lately, and it's probably because of other things I'm involved with around here, but the long-term unemployed, and I'm you guys are in this business, I'm preaching to the choir. Long-term unemployed is something that's constantly, it seems like, in my front lobe now, and always, wrestling with that. It seems like I don't know that success stories necessarily connect to that population, but my point is, whatever population, a success story that benefits youth, or a success story from a summer program, I mean, those are models and modeling techniques, and being able to promote them through social media channels and others, through your public relations networks and communications channels generally, really reflect well on the system and start to build the kind of, ultimate customer loyalty and buy-in that we all want. So that's very interesting, the concept of success stories and monitoring posts. Darlene, I want to follow up with you first. In a way, you did get a little bit into the more granular part, which is really what I expected the original answers to be. And I think Joanna and Mike took us at the 5,000 and 10,000 foot view, and you got us a little closer to the ground, all of which are really important when we talk about measuring success. You mentioned Facebook, you mentioned Hootsuite. and others. I couldn't actually go as fast as you were talking. Can you just speak to a minute? I think most people know what's available. Maybe that I shouldn't assume that. What kinds of metrics are available to you at Facebook and Hootsuite and the other places you look?
Hootsuite is all-encompassing depending on what all you use. So you can post to your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter accounts all from Hootsuite, and then you can get a look directly from there. I also look at the others because sometimes we don't use Hootsuite if we post directly to Facebook or whatever. I want to compare metrics from the different places. But the kinds of things you can get are how many people have shared, how many people have retweeted. On the blog with WordPress, we can see how many people have clicked on a particular blog post to see how popular it was. We can see whether people shared the blog post. We look at comments on the blog post. So we track those. I do a monthly report, mostly for me, although I share it with others in the agency. But then I also do a quarter over quarter, so I can see, did we increase in followers over that time and what percentage? Did we have more people reading our blog posts on WordPress within that time frame? And it's been a good way for me to track how well we've been doing just from a purely numbers standpoint.
Awesome. Let me go back to the beginning, Joanna. Mm-hmm. Your first comments, and I don't know if you're going to connect to where Darlene was there or not, but you talked about, again, it made so much sense to me. Find out where you are right now. Now, of course, people are doing the social media assessment in our social media guide, and they're dipping their toes in the water, or they're up to their knees in that kind of result. But I'm not sure that's exactly what you were alluding to. What do you mean by it, and how do I find out where I am right now?
What I meant was, if you're already currently using tools, do an analysis of the kind of engagement that you have with your customers using those tools. So, just what Darlene was saying, that she's measuring right now to measure her engagement is the same thing that you want to do from the start before you set up whatever your goals are. So, for instance, when we started out, we looked at, how many Facebook followers did we have? Who were those followers? What were the demographics? Were they male or female? Were they Caucasian or minority? Where were they located in the state? What were their ages? We wanted to know if our engagement levels of the people on our Facebook page reflected that of the folks that we had currently on unemployment in New York State. So was that specific tool, the Facebook tool, one of the premier tools that the majority of our unemployed New Yorkers were connecting with us on or not? Did it reflect that? Same thing with, our YouTube, channel. How many subscribers did we have? Did they look like our unemployed insurance customers? Was there something that we could do in content that could maybe generate, more engagement with, a specific customer base? Same thing with, our Twitter, page as well. And we also had Flickr at the time, so we were looking at all of those. Then what we did was we looked at, who are we currently serving? Who are our unemployed? Who's being served in our career centers? And does engagement from all of those different tools reflect that? Are we missing somebody? Are there some followers that we're not touching base with, that we're not doing a good job engaging with? And if so, what tools can we add to be able to, reach those folks? Or what can we currently do right now to be able to change our content to be able to reach those folks? So I'll give you an example. So by looking at our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our followers on YouTube, et cetera, there were some customers that we were missing. We were really missing a better engagement level with our immigrant and LEP customer base. Whether they're on those tools or not, what we do know is that a lot of not-for-profits and community-based organizations are, and they're not connected with us. So if you're missing some influencers and you're not helping people get to work, you're not getting the information that they need to be able to help people get back to work, so what can we do about that? We weren't doing a good job making sure that a lot of our veterans were, getting the information that we needed. So what can we do to engage our veteran, customers better as well? The other thing we noticed was, just because you have people who are quote-unquote social media experts, they're not all like Darlene. They're not all like Mike. And so you can't assume that the people who are currently responsible in your communications office necessarily see it from the customer end. And so there were certain things that they were doing that weren't helping with engagement. And I'll give you one huge example. What time are you currently posting right now some of your information? And is that the time that your customers are most often engaged with that specific tool? So I was noticing our communications department was posting a lot in the morning, and what I was also seeing was based on the analytics, most of our customers and the people who are out of work weren't engaged with our tools after 2 p.m. So if we're posting at 9 in the morning, then a lot of the information that we're providing is getting lost in the stream of these customers. They're not seeing it. So we need to post either again at 2, or we need to make sure that the posts that are related to reemployment, job search, things that really matter to that customer base is posted after 2 p.m. So there's certain metrics that you can look at from where you are right now that can help you think about where you want to go down the line.
You know what? That is like stunning to me. I got to tell you. And Brian, I'm going to ask you now. Heads up to the states. If you're playing jingle bells in the background and sipping on Christmas drinks, hold down the background noise. Because Brian, if you would you open us up the whole phone line?
The conference is now in talk mode.
So we've now got 20, 25 minutes left with these guys, and I just want to get myself out of the way and engage you as much as possible. Joanna, you just kind of were blowing my mind when you got to the level of analysis there. So, I'm thinking you mean check out where I am now, and that means, well, I have 100 likes or I have 1,000 likes. And you're like so far down into the weeds beyond that it's stunning to me. Alan from Georgia, I think, may feel about the same way, and he's asking a question about demographics. Alan, if you're there, go ahead and chime in verbally and just ask your question. Let's see if we can get you an answer.
The green. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. The question was when Joanna was going through her measurements of success on Facebook, she had mentioned that they first looked to see what their Facebook followers were and then the demographics. So our question was simply, how was she able to get the demographics of those Facebook users?
Yeah, my question too.
Basically, Facebook Analytics provides you a lot of that information.
Okay.
So you can get it from that alone. I mean, Darlene, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I get a lot just from the Facebook Analytics. The other thing I did, this is kind of bad, but I'm looking for, there's a lot of these web analytics tools that you can purchase out there. And so, for instance, there's Radian 6, which is a big one. There's Sysmos out there, which is a pretty good one, and IntelliBuzz. There's a whole boatloads of these. So we're looking at purchasing them to make it easier for us to do an analysis. But in the meantime, when they are giving you demos of these tools, they will live demo your sites for you. So
Joanna.
So when they were live demoing my sites, I was writing down everything they were telling me.
We're in a storm. But so number one, though, to get that's really interesting. So number one, your Facebook demographics are deeper than you think, right? So when you see people that have shared, you can look at their profile and kind of see who they are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the Facebook analytics for your page, if you own a page, they'll give you that. Facebook actually puts all of that together for you. There's a Facebook analytic report. And Darlene, do you want to go into more detail about what it looks like on your end?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's just a button right there that says Page Insights, and Facebook updates this kind of thing all the time. So every time you come in, they're like, take a tour of this. So you do have to kind of keep on top of it. But you can see by age group, you can see by, men, women. One of the things that I find interesting is the cities where people are coming from. And granted, some of that's by IP address, so it's, it's not quite an exact science, but it gives me a chance to see whether, I've been posting a lot from Boise. Well, our market is mostly Boise. Our followers are mostly Boise. And some of this, to me, is a bit of a chicken versus egg argument for all of these. So I'm posting a lot from Boise. If I posted more from somewhere else, would those people come? Or they're just not there because I'm not posting? And so I do a lot of experimenting and then look back to see what happened after I changed what I was posting or images or that type of thing.
Right, and the Insight page is free. I mean, basically, Facebook wants you to use their insights. They want, you to use, a lot of their information. So it's not something that you have to necessarily go out and buy more of, but it's, all right there. They'll tell you your reach. It'll tell you how they've been engaged, who, your target audience is. There's a whole bunch of great information that Facebook provides free if you have a Facebook page.
And isn't there something you have to get over 100 likes or something, and then you get access to that, if I remember correctly? I think you have to have some basic platform, but not a lot.
You do. I think it's less than 100, but yeah, there is a base level you have to get to.
So you know what? I want to go back now, and states, feel free to chime in, type in a question, but then I'm going to come to you verbally. Remember, our phone lines are open now. And time is clicking, so you don't want to lose access to these guys. But, Michael, you raised the issue of helping people find jobs, better jobs, help people. And, back to Joanna's thing about, find out where you want. It's almost like find out where you are, Joanna. Argue about where you want to be. Get your goals specified. Ultimately, it's about finding jobs, better jobs, connecting business to talent. And then analyze like crazy to figure out if you're reaching the right folks, the right subgroups to be able to do the things, Mike, that your goal set out to do. So when we're talking about measures, I guess it starts first by saying what is it that you're trying to do, and then backwards channel your metrics back to track to those goals, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right?
Right.
So
how does it, you mentioned the talent communities, you think, we were talking a little bit offline, Mike, and, I challenged you, and I think it was clear that none of us have the silver bullet answer. But, as we integrate more social media into our integrated system, and therefore, into labor exchange, I mean, those folks that are talking about using social media beyond just awareness building, but to do things like labor exchange services, job fairs, the like. I mean, how do you track that outcome? How do you measure that success? And Mike, when we talked about it, well, I think I'll let you answer that, and then maybe part B of that is your concept of talent communities. How does that help?
Right. Well, there are obviously ways that you can track success that don't involve online stuff. I mean, if your AJC asks people when they come in how they heard about you, and if you include social media and a specific social media property as one of those things, you can get a kind of a gross effect, if you will. If your business service representatives survey the employers that they deal with on, an annual basis and ask them how many people have you hired from the state job bank, how many people have you hired because because of a referral from an AJC that turned out to be from social media, it gets kind of complicated and messy when you start doing all this stuff. But there's ways to do it. The thing, as I mentioned about the talent community is you've got the parties there in a space. And yes, there's still a disconnect because what we're going to do is we're going to start you out in the talent community, and then when you get serious about applying for that job, you'll do it through whatever way the employer has indicated by their posting of that job on the labor exchange on MinnesotaWorks.net. Mm-hmm. That may be just going directly to the employer site. There may be something that keeps you right on Minnesota Works to do the application depending on the employer. So there's still a possibility of losing that thread of, this contact yielded this result. Well, one of the talent community pieces of software that we looked at as we were trying to gather information on requirements has a whole pipeline, talent pipeline management component built right into it, such that not only you're not just doing this to report to us to be nice to tell us that we had a positive effect. You're doing this because you're managing things like how many times have you contacted somebody on the talent community, and now you can see a gross metric like, well, it takes 10 interactions on the talent community before we bring somebody in for an interview, and it takes 3 interviews before we hire them, and it extends on out into being just a whole HR function. That would kind of be ideal if everybody had that kind of capability, and if you could connect that back to an action in the workforce system. Now you can close that loop. And it may have nothing to do with social media, because this then becomes kind of the back office for the HR effort, and it's also integrated into the online presence and the social media presence. So it's tremendously exciting to see the possibilities here now, how they play out in terms of actual real life experience is a different matter, of course.
Yeah. And again, we're still learning, so it's fair to say that nobody has all the answers, and we, you measure, you refine, and you analyze, and you measure again, right? But
right.
Talent Communities does give us, a more direct way to really get at things like, did we engage business to the level of actually putting somebody into a placement, which is difficult to do. And as you said to me offline, how do you do it even within our own, our core business? It's not always easy to do. We're always trying to track results about whether somebody left, got a job, and stayed with one or not, right? So it's a constant struggle. Guys, I wanted to go kind of back to the likes and the kinds of basic measurements that you can get from tools like the Facebook Analytics and Hootsuite. And I do want to follow up, Joanna, with some of those kind of more detailed things that you're scheduling sales meetings on so you can get more information. I'd love to get the names of those tools, and we can share them with people so they can start to get more familiar. We can chat them up later. But I'm a state, and I'm starting out. Right? I might have a Facebook page. I got a few followers. I really am not sure. Thanks, Joanna. And guys, states, you can see those tools are I have a funny feeling these companies are about to get a lot of appointments for sales meetings around the country, whether or not we buy them. But I'm starting out. I'm a state, and I've got some presence, but frankly, it's not been, really a heavy focus for us. I'm dipping my toes in. In the first year, I'm probably going to want to make sure that I get Facebook and LinkedIn up, and I got a Twitter account, and I go from whatever level I'm at to just, making more of a splash. And maybe I'm going to do some stuff around low-level, like LinkedIn kinds of groups. I'll call it the minor leagues to Talent Communities, Mike, if you will. But, we shouldn't sell them short. I know of some LWIBs, if not on the state level, at the local level, they're being used pretty effectively around the country today. So if I'm starting out, how would you advise me to start out? In other words, what I want to get, my goals might look like what? Put up a page, get to a certain number of likes, measure the level of engagement and target service. Give me some sense of what's a roadmap look like for me if I'm really at the, at the most elementary level. And it's probably going to require you to think back to when you first started to even give us any ideas on that. Who wants to start?
Darlene, do you want to start? Because you guys really started fresh.
Well, actually, they had started before I was hired, because Georgia Smith has been very key in getting social media going here. But I guess it goes back to what we talked about last week, which is your staff time and your goals, and then deciding which platforms you think you are comfortable using and have the time to use, because it's important that you're consistent in whatever you do. So you don't want to start Pinterest and then put something up, once every 6 months or whatever.
Right.
So before you go somewhere, you need to make sure that you can sustain it. So that's where I would start, is figuring out what makes the most sense within your goals and time. And then once you do that, figure out how often you can post and work on scheduling so that you're not trying to do it night and day, and then look at your feedback from there.
What I did is I looked at what was going on with social recruiting and looked at a lot of the social media reports that are coming out every year about, average users, their income, where they're coming from. And then I also asked for the most current information about who we're serving in our career centers based on our case management system, as well as getting regular UI information as well and employment insurance information. And I broke that up by age and by gender. And then I wanted to see, based on age and gender, which tools would be probably the best tools to use based on who my customer base was. And then I did a sampling of who our business was and then just took a look at what tools they were currently using to see if we were using tools that our business customers were pretty much using as well. And then I set up a meeting with our communications department. They're the folks who are responsible for using the tools. And then I had a couple of different things, action steps that I thought would be helpful to be able to better reach the customer base that we're looking at engaging with. And then from there, I made a couple recommendations of additional tools that we weren't using based on, what I was seeing from, social media recruiting and also what I was seeing from, who our customers were. So, for instance, we weren't using Pinterest and, based on some of the population that is our customer base, I thought, it might be a nice thing to be able to do that. And then also based on our population base to shift a little bit away from Flickr and to be a little bit more responsive using Instagram. And then also making the recommendations to go out and snag the name of any other tools that are out there. We may not want to use them right now, but you definitely want to make sure you protect your brand and just run out there and snag everything you can with your agency's name at that point so nobody else can pick that up.
That's a big, I'm not sure people would have thought about that, Joanna. That's really cool. But it is true because, you're going to, at some point you may want to turn to one of those tools and find out somebody has hijacked your digital space, as it were, right? So you just put that placeholder in place early, whether or not you really engage it, if you will. You just laid out a roadmap that I thought was really cool, and I remember, working with a few states back in the early starts of some of these projects, and one of the major questions that people had, and I think you guys struggled with, was, my God, there's so much out there. I mean, I don't have any staff time now. How many hours is it going to take? Now I got Facebook to do and LinkedIn to do and Twitter, and what's Pinterest anyway again, and what's Flickr, and why would I care, and YouTube, and it just seems like overwhelming to even decide, like, where do you go? Because someone might say, well, I'll just start with Facebook, or I'll just start with LinkedIn. And then you realize engagement really gets driven by pictures and video, and you say, oops, I needed that YouTube channel after all. So I love the roadmap you started to lay out there where you said, let me start first by understanding who are those people I'm trying to serve. And Mike, I got back to your first comment, right? And you would define it as the people that are in our job centers today looking at your case management system and doing some homework, and looking at the kind of demographic of your UI population, and then saying, what tools are going to help me reach those audiences? And you kind of reverse engineered which tools you started with. Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I just think... Rick, for Minnesota, what was important for us was the initial surveying that we did, and that's how we set our targets for the tool.
Same for us in Idaho.
Right, and we talked about that yesterday in the webinar, and at least I tried to convey how much I realized that you all drove your tactics in communications so much based on what you learned from the survey. And you really made that survey so much more than just the exercise. It really was a kinetic driver of tactics. But I don't know that I made the connection for that audience yesterday, and I think if not, you guys made it today, that it not only drives your tactics in the sense of your strategic plan, it may in fact drive decisions about which social media tools make the most sense to start with and then to move on from there. Very, really great information. And by the way, if you look at the chat box, Alan is from Georgia is saying the same thing. Matt Bruce is out here with a question. Matt, your phone should be live. If you want to just chime in, I'd love to have you lead the discussion. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to ask about sort of getting beyond just the measure of impact, like whether you've moved the needle on what you want constituents to do or information you want them to have, and how you sort of evaluate whether that impact that you're producing is worth the effort that you're putting in. Because to me, that's the sort of big unknown here, is that it seems like there is a lot of upfront effort and investment that has to happen in terms of training a new staff and figuring out a new system to use these new tools. That's a lot of upfront costs. It's probably not worth the effort at first. And so how do you get to the point where you've evaluated and said, okay, we're putting all this effort and it actually is worth what we're doing? How much time do you give yourself to get to that point?
Well, this is Mike, and I don't want to sound flip, but I would just say that not doing social media will no longer be an option in the very near future. So, that's just an overall statement. You are correct. There's a learning curve. There's a fair amount of investment in time and money that's necessary. And in Minnesota, we already did have our social media properties fairly well established. So, we didn't go from zero. But getting them started up is really not that bad. Doing the survey, we did very inexpensively. You can use the training materials that we developed and that the other pilot states have developed as a basis to spring off of. There's been a fair amount of work. There's the handbook it's still in draft form that will be available to you, that goes through chapter and verse. It's very, very detailed. I don't know how many pages. It's 60 pages long at least, to provide a roadmap for you. But to actually say to somebody, here is the return on our investment for this right now, it's the cart before the horse. You can't really know that until you've actually tried doing it. Your state may be completely different in the way that job seekers use social media. However, I would say when we surveyed our REA respondents, we were totally surprised that a huge segment of them said they didn't need any training on finding a job using social media because they felt they were doing it effectively. I would be very surprised if you surveyed your state and you didn't see the same thing. They're out there doing it. You need to meet them where they are, and that's your ROI.
Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I mean, at this point, a lot of these tools aren't that new. So if we look at, when Facebook was released and when Twitter was released, you're looking at 7 or 8 years already. They're fairly old. And so, it's definitely worth the investment because it's one of the primary ways that people are currently, connecting, recruiting, engaging, hiring. And to look at reemployment and not be using these with your customers isn't doing them a service. So it is a difficult thing, like Mike said, to sort of, associate ROI, especially when you're talking about government. But our job is to make sure that we connect people to jobs. And if you're talking about the primary way, at least based on, the majority of the businesses in New York and Minnesota and even, Idaho are either hiring or connecting is through social media, and you're not doing it, then you're not participating in sort of what's happening. And so while it's hard to say, listen, the return on investment, the return on time is X, Y, and Z, and so therefore it's needed, and it's a hard thing to necessarily measure, you're not helping your customers if you're not participating in it. So, just like a lot of folks may have not, wanted to use email back in the day or thought a web page was necessary, right now, right this moment, this is, what folks are using. And so, we have to be sort of a nimble and flexible government and use what business is using. And so this is where it's at. So it's definitely worth the investment of time because you're not doing your customers any service if you're not using it.
And I would just add that once you've had them established, there are going to be certain events or times when people really are going to turn to you. So, for instance, for us, I think I gave this example in our first sessions, but during the federal government shutdown, we wrote a couple of blog posts about what that means for federal workers and UI benefits, that type of thing, and it tripled the amount of page views we got on the blog. So we had information that people needed, and they turned to us for that. And I know that Joanna can say the same thing, with the hurricanes and weather out there. It's a place where people are used to looking now for information in times like that, and so we need to be in that space as well.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is we do web analytics on our website too, and we look at, where traffic is being driven, where are people coming to us from, or how are they getting to our information. And you can even do that on Facebook. How do people find your Facebook page? And to be honest with you, even though our website is a hub to a certain degree, if you're looking at how they're getting to our information, they're getting to our information mostly through search engines. So they're going directly to our Facebook page from Google, or they're going directly to a specific page on our website from Google. Nobody's really going to our website and then connecting on a social media platform and then going to a different piece of information. So the two ways they're getting to all the information we have is either through, a search engine or directly from, one of our social media tools after they've gone to a search engine. So it's really the way that we're communicating and driving traffic to all of the other pieces of information that we have.
And that is such a good and interesting point to add. Gideon says it's a very relevant observation from Joanna. Gideon is much more eloquent than I. That's what I was just trying to say, Gideon. And to Matt's original question, and first off, kudos to him, because these are the questions that are being asked all of us. Yeah, I can't spell either, Gideon. But, this is the questions ultimately that Congress and others are asking ETA, right? And so, and governors and others and the press might be asking you in your states. But there is a report, and I'll try to find it and maybe post it for you. You guys may know it, may not. And I'm trying to remember if it's McKinsey or Price. One of the big houses published it. And the essence of the report was simply this, that the labor exchange business is essentially under attack, that there is a fundamental shift in the way that employers are looking at the concept of recruiting, screening, selecting talent. And that, by the way, the concept of talent communities comes from this line of thinking, Mike, right? And it is the mindset of employers today is that I am going to meet talent somewhere along in the pipeline. They may still be in the educational system. I'm not going to look for talent by placing a classified ad or a post on Monster. I'm going to harvest talent. I'm going to connect with the best and the brightest over time, introduce them to my brand, get to know people on a personal level in social media, and then I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to recruit them into jobs because they're the best and the brightest. And if you think of that as the new method of recruiting and selecting and screening talent, then you realize if we're not in this space, at some point we become irrelevant. And so the return on investment really is about protecting our brand, about meeting people, both seekers and now increasingly employers where they are, and ultimately, a system that is integrated, that brings people in, that connects them with employers early through social media, that connects them to growth sectors early, becomes an economic development asset for a region. It becomes a talent pipeline that employers get really attracted to. So Matt, I don't think it's a simple story to be able to answer your question. You probably knew that when you asked it. It's an important question for us to continue to ask, and in every state, I really want to challenge you guys, because as you've learned from this, you just got a lot of great information, but there is no one answer. It sounds like the right answer is figure out what your goal is and who you're trying to serve, and then find the right metrics platform to get you a way to track it. And success, it's like meeting your goals. Mike?
I'd just like to say, Matt, we're not minimizing the problem at all. I know that you're going to have to get some money to do this, and I know that you're going to have to get the authorization to spend that money on everything. But you don't feel like you have to start big. But you can start really pretty much as small as you want. And just one more thing, as small as you want it, but you do need to commit to it. And you do need to commit to it for over a period of time, because once you start talking on social media, people are going to expect you to do so and to continue to do so. So there is a commitment there.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify. I wasn't asking whether social media, all of it in general, is worth the effort. I wasn't really questioning that. What I was saying is that you have to evaluate the particular way that you go about using it versus another way you could go about using it. So for example, you could say we're going to have our staff really get into the Facebook profile page and really make that the thing where we put our effort. There's just limited time and budgets, and so they could be doing that, or they could be making that effort on LinkedIn, or they could be trying to make the effort on Twitter. And so it seems to me you'd have to evaluate what's the amount of effort or investment you're putting into a particular strategy on social media versus the impact that has, and then eventually we want to go back and figure out, okay, was that worth it, or should we try a different approach in social media?
Yeah, and that's why I was just going to say that's why the survey is a great first step. It's generally not that expensive to do, especially if you do it electronically, and that'll give you a feel. But the chances are good that that the big three are the ones that you're going to want to focus on. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. LinkedIn more for the professional, higher income type folks. Twitter is a great way to attract people to assets that you may otherwise have, and Facebook's a great place to connect just in general.
That's fair.
And let me say this first off, as we come to unfortunately, again, the end of our time here. Darlene mentioned it. I think all of you guys are probably using it, and Matt may already know it, but for the benefit of those who do not, Hootsuite is something that I would really consider looking at if I were you, even if you're using the free version of it. And I think the professional version of it is something like $90 to $100 a year. It's not a lot of money. By using Hootsuite, you can create content and post simultaneously across all those platforms. So to Matt's point, the same effort that I need to put content on Facebook now gets applied across Facebook, LinkedIn, and Hootsuite and Twitter, for example, all with the same relative amount of energy and time. So yes, Gideon is asking whether I can locate and circulate that report. It's from a big brand, Gideon. I don't know whether it was Pricewaterhouse. I can't recall. I worked on it with the Manufacturing Institute in D.C., so I will track it down and post it. I don't have it at my fingertips, but I will. The other thing I want to say as we close today is Jen Pirtle chimed in on a note to me about the fact that there are surveys, excellent surveys, and more than likely they are samples from these pilots in the social media guide. And I also want to mention a lot, not all, but a lot of the tools we've been talking about, all the various social media tools, some of the aggregation tools, content aggregation tools, some of the measurement tools like Hootsuite and others that we've talked about are all previewed for you in that social media guide. So again, it's a big document, as Fred said, or as Michael said, but it's definitely worth going back and looking at the table of contents, refamiliarize yourselves with what's in there. But I want to encourage the states on the line to continue to go ahead and pop in your any questions you may have, any thoughts or feedback in the main chat, or shoot us an email. If we do get questions after the fact, we will get you answers one way or another, either on the website or through direct email responses. I want to thank all of you for attending again today. As you can tell, these guys, the richness of the knowledge available in this room is really important to share. And I also want to thank ETA for being here, and importantly, all of you three, Joanna, Michael, Darlene. We call on you time and time again, and every time you come to bat, you deliver and give us something of great value. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you personally for your time and your talent today. I'm also going to ask you to stay on to answer our feedback questions. And I do promise Gideon and the rest of you, I will come up with that report about the harvesting of talent, and I will get it out to everybody via the website and let you know when it's there. But I'll do it before the week is out for sure. So, Jen Pirtle, thank you for being with us. ETA, all you states, especially you SMEs, thanks. You guys are wonderful, great. And everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.